The final step, deciding whether or not we've made a decision error or not, is probably the hardest for students. First, we will start with the 4 answers that we made in the first 4 text boxes, and then we will have access to our decision boxes. We established earlier that in x1 the null was true and the alternative was false and there were no effects, and that for x2 and x3 the null was false and the alternative was true. That is, there were real effects, and we knew there were real effects because we added real effects. Thus, for x1, we could either make a type 1 error or a correct decision. For x2 and 3, we can either make a correct decision or a type 2 error. Okay, so for x1, and alpha equals 0.05, we decided to retain the null hypothesis. So we retained the null hypothesis when in fact the null hypothesis was true. Therefore, we've made a correct decision. So we'll put a 0 in there. For x2 and alpha equals 0.05, we see that we retained the null hypothesis when in fact the null was false. That is, we decided we didn't find any effects when there really were effects. Therefore, for question number 7, we've made a type 2 error. For question number 8, we rejected the null hypothesis when in fact the null hypothesis was false. Therefore, we've made a correct decision. And for number 9, and here we set alpha to a very low value, and we're going to retain the null hypothesis for x3 when in fact the null hypothesis is false, so we've made a type 2 error. And note that for x3, we've made a different kind of decision depending on where alpha was set. If alpha is set fairly high at 0.05, we make a correct decision. If alpha is set at a really low value, we make a decision error. Now for x3, based on the means in the ANOVA, x4 is most similar to, is it x1, x2, or x3? We'll go back and look at the ANOVA table, and we note that for x3 the significance is very low. We detected very large effects, so we're going to say that for x4 it's most similar to x3. Okay, so we've got our 10 answers in. We'll submit this to be graded, and we find that for the first 9 items we got it correct. We have a total score of 9, but for the last item it really was closest to x2 rather than x3. Sometimes we make a decision error even though we make a rational decision, and this is one of those cases. Statistics aren't perfect. We can't prove anything using statistics. We can make rational decisions, and sometimes those decisions are incorrect. Oh well.